Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Conscious Corner. I'm Courtney, and Annie is under the weather and unfortunately can't be here today, but I'm thrilled to have an incredible guest with us. Joining us today is Megan O'Neill, litigator turned certified health and fitness coach. In addition to her coaching role, Megan educates others about exercise, nutrition, and how to obtain greater well-being. She's also a keynote speaker and empowers professionals and individuals to live healthier, more fulfilling lives. I've had the pleasure of knowing Megan since before we became boy moms, when one of our top priorities was taking our dogs to hang out with the 6 a.m. dog hangout at Old Swedes in Philadelphia, where we could let our dogs play and sip on coffee and chat. So I'm really excited about our conversation today because we're diving into the importance of the mind-body connection and how, despite the busyness of our lives, we can find ways to deepen self-care and promote overall well-being. So Megan, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here and to reconnect with you.
Yeah. So I, like you, have transitioned. We have a background in having been litigators, and I've transitioned more recently than you into the wellness teaching sector. So I'm really interested to hear more about your journey from becoming a litigator to becoming a fitness coach.
It was definitely a big leap of faith. I transitioned probably about the middle of 2006. I decided, kind of, for a spur of the moment, meaning I knew that I wanted to transition out of law, but I wasn't sure when that was going to be. And I just had an epiphany one morning that this was it. This was the time. And I wanted to do something that I loved. I'd always loved health and wellness. I had taught classes before, just fitness related, but I wanted to do that. I wanted to do something that I loved, that I felt passionate about, and law just was not it for me. I felt like I was good at it. I was good at trial. I had won most of the trials that I had done, and I came from a trial background from the Philly DA's office. So it's not that I, felt uncomfortable in a courtroom or anything like that, but I felt uncomfortable in life, meaning I just was not fulfilled. So I woke up one morning, I went to the gym. I actually worked out with my own trainer back then. And I left just thinking, you know what? I really like him, but I could do better. Like I could make people feel better, like better about themselves and better in general. And, I just that all of a sudden it was just like my eyes were open and that was what I was going to do. And that's how I started my, journey out of law and into the health and wellness arena.
And that's amazing. I know from a firsthand experience, just having to juggle a heavy caseload and the demands of the work that's involved in being a litigator and being straddled between that line of work, but then also trying to grow something that you're so passionate about, something that you really want to launch to help others. So just the fact that you could transition from one to another is incredible in my eyes. And I think what's unique about what you and I do is having the background of just how stressful it can be to be a litigator and others, not just attorneys, but people who work in inherently stressful careers. The fact that we can relate to the stressors, like we know what it's like to try and balance that with everything else that we do, I think in turn allows us to offer that much more in our respective coaching mindfulness roles. Do you see in what you're doing now on the coaching and education end of things, do you see how your experience having worked as a litigator in some way influences your style of coaching or teaching?
It absolutely does. it's relatable in so many ways to my individual clients. And then I come into companies and I teach corporate classes, fitness, nutrition, just mental and emotional health. And for both the individual clients that I work with and the corporate clients, it really helps because I know that background. So when people tell me they don't have time, I'm like, great, let's talk about we don't have time. What does that look like? Where can we find the time? Coming from that kind of treadmill craziness that I was on back then all the time, it is so helpful to look at other people's schedules and say, all right, this is what we could do to find the time. And by the way, this here that you're spending so much time on is not productive for your health and wellness. So let's try to fix that and see where we can build time in for yourself. So it's definitely been helpful in that arena. And then when it comes to actually, how did I kind of branch into companies? It was really helpful because, a lot of companies that there is legal issues. Before COVID, I used to teach in person all the time at companies, and there was a lot of just legal ramifications to that. What does that look like when you bring in a fitness instructor, or nutrition coach or health and wellness coach, whatever I was doing, to our company, actually like on premises. So it was definitely helpful that, I had my law background. I could review my own contracts. We could talk about, the employment, riders, insurance coverage, liability, all of that. So just from a practical standpoint, it was helpful. And, I think education's never wasted. So it's like, I don't practice law at all anymore, other than to just help a friend or client if they need some advice legally. But it's always helpful, and I've never taken away from that. It's always been helpful. And it's transitioned nicely, like I said, into different aspects of companies and individual training. It's just helped a lot for me to understand people better.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just the relatability, like you sort of know what people are experiencing, and then the practicalities, like you mentioned, just the legal aspects that come up, you're able to handle that in addition to the training that you do. But I wanted to unpack a few things that you said because I think it's really so beneficial. You mentioned something that has come up in prior episodes that Annie and I have had where we talk about, these really top performing professionals who are so strapped for time that allowed a lot of the wellness practices sort of get pushed to the wayside because of how we're pulled in so many different directions. But the fact that you bring these tools, these resources and education, exercise into the workplace, I think is a huge gift. A lot of times, if we put it on our to-do list, when we leave the office, whether we're working 9 to 5 or 7 to 8, however long our days are, it's easy to kind of push it to the wayside. And we keep saying, oh, we'll get to it. But there's a different level of accountability, I think, when you offer these programs within the workplace and when you can learn these skills, like in a group setting, it can make it more fun and you can kind of learn and grow from one another. So I love that aspect. And I also love how you're sharing that we're bringing in the work that you and I do, we're bringing different ways that people can develop healthier habits and maybe recognize some of their existing or current habits that really don't serve them. So you were mentioning going back to the time element, like people may think they don't have time, but when they can actually become more aware of how they're spending their time, that I think becomes the gateway to finding like, oh, okay, I can carve out, X amount of time to promote deeper care for myself, whether it's on the exercise or the nutrition end of things. So that just really resonates with me in terms of like not having enough time. Speaking of time, I see what comes up in the work that I do. People will come to me, whether it's working like in a one-on-one capacity or the 6-week program, mindfulness program I offer, or maybe they enroll in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And when they come in, especially lawyers, I feel like lawyers were so set on obtaining a certain outcome, like whether it's in our cases or in our personal lives, that we're very rigid with ourselves. I don't know if you see this in the people who you work with, who you coach or train, but they'll come to you maybe, but maybe not. But this is what I see coming up for me, where they really want to obtain a certain outcome by a certain date. Like by, 6 months in or 6 weeks in, I'm gonna be a thinner version of myself, or a less stressed out or anxious version, or I'm going to feel less pain, and so on. And what I like to explain to them is that while it's really good for us to set intentions for ourselves, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical, it's helpful to also notice how hard we can be on ourselves. Because I think if we don't get to a certain place where we want or like to be, by a certain date, that we can really become discouraged. So I try to explain it's more about the process of learning these new skills, of developing healthier habits. And I'm wondering, does the same sort of hold true in the work that you do, that it's like more about a journey, like a overall wellness journey, as opposed to setting these rigid deadlines where we have to feel or look or have something be a certain way?
It really is. I see it all the time, and it really is a problem for a lot of people. I always laugh about that too, because clients will say, "Oh well, here's a perfect example is that I just have been working with a woman for a very long time now, and I really, really enjoy working with her. And she's very busy. She's in the corporate world. She's two girls, and she had never been a runner, and she took up running probably when we started, so about 4 or 5 months ago. And she's lost 20, 30 pounds. She's done a great job cleaning up her diet and kind of getting in a better mental place.
Yeah.
But she started doing a few little 5K races, and she's maybe lost motivation the last couple of weeks just because of different things going on in her life. And this Sunday she was supposed to do a race and she didn't. And I texted her in the afternoon, we always check in, and asked her how it went. And she said, "I'm so disappointed. I did not go. I didn't go." So I called her and I'm like, okay, so you didn't go. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't do something at some point that they had planned to do. So we reevaluate. You sign up for something else that's going to motivate you, and you stay on track with that, because at the end of this is a long game. It's not like a short game. So I
Right.
always say that, I'm like, we're just not trying to be healthy for, a week or a month, or, somebody's wedding that's next month, or
Right.
beginning of the year. We want to be healthy well into our 80s, 90s, where we're running after our grandkids and running with them. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, these little goals that we have are so important, but they're all moldable. They're all pliable. And you can't beat yourself up when you don't get to one goal, or, you wanted to lose. I hate when people just want to lose a certain amount of weight by a certain time, or, they're so rigid with things. So I always try to tell people, like, let's have goals, but we're
Yeah.
also going to they're always working. It's always a work in progress.
Mhm.
And if you don't reach it by, January 1st, and you had to be there, it's not the end of the world. You're working towards a greater goal of health. And it's funny, I work with people in all different professions, stay-at-home moms to people in super stressful big tech companies. And no matter where they are, that always seems to be a common theme.
Yeah.
It's very rigid, and it is devastation when we're not there.
Yeah.
We do talk about that a lot. So I definitely find that in my work too. And I think that's something that can evolve for everyone.
Mhm.
And I think the hardest people really are women. We are so hard on ourselves that I find that my women, individual and corporate clients, are just so hard on themselves when it comes to goals, health goals, mental and emotional goals. And if they're not there, it's we just beat ourselves up way too much.
Yeah, yeah, I think the standard with which we hold ourselves up to, and it's not to say that men don't as well, but I think as women, we want to do it all. Like we want to be the best parent, we want to be the best role model, we want to be the best worker or spouse, or it goes on and on and on. But I like your approach that it's okay. Like sometimes we fall down or we steer off course, or maybe we don't hit the goals that we set for ourselves. But everything is constantly evolving. And in what I teach, we can really deepen our awareness of just how judgmental we are of ourselves, how critical we are for where we think we fall short or where we didn't do good enough. So I really appreciate that approach to how you work with your clients. And I think when they can realize or appreciate that it's not always linear, that sometimes it's going to dip and dive, and that it's the bigger picture. It's like not a race, it's more of like a lifelong journey where we're constantly learning and growing and evolving. With mindfulness, at least, we say that's why it's like a constant practice that we just keep at it. And it's really not a race to get to a certain place at any certain time. Speaking of mindfulness, while we're sort of on the subject, do you have any techniques or any practices that you weave into the coaching or the training that you do with your clients that involves some type of mindfulness practice?
What we talk about a lot is what kind of is mindfulness for each person.
Yeah.
And I just tell everyone, and even myself, and I've had a recent lesson on this, is being present in the moment, because we can't get back seconds, minutes, hours of our life that we could have been present for, and we weren't because we were distracted. We were looking at our phones. We were, so stressed out that we couldn't even focus on what was going on in the moment. And I always tell people that it's like, it could be an example of anything. If you're in a conversation with a friend that's really important, or your child, your spouse, partner, and you're so distracted, you can't then say an hour later, like, that was good. Can we redo that? Because I was not present. It just doesn't work like that. And
Yeah.
recently I had this really was eye-opening for me, because I try to be really good about it, but I fall, by the wayside on that sometimes too. And we just went to this incredible trip, my boys and I, to the Maldives.
Yeah.
And for work, I had this amazing opportunity to travel through my work a lot. And I was teaching classes over there. During the one day we went snorkeling, and we are snorkeling in this Indian Ocean. For those of you who don't know, the listeners, by the way, I had no idea where the Maldives was. I just knew they were incredibly beautiful huts over the water.
I'm just glad you're saying Maldives because I've always thought it was pronounced Maldives.
Maldives. And I'm not sure of that either, because half the people there said Maldives and half said
Yeah.
Maldives. We also had a layover in Qatar, and half the people said Qatar. So
That's
I'm
fine.
just sticking with Maldives. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's in Asia, in the Indian Ocean, underneath Sri Lanka. It's just a little
Beautiful.
geography fact. But it's this incredibly blue like crystal clear turquoise water. Most beautiful water I've ever seen over any place I've ever been.
Yeah.
And we're snorkeling, and my two boys, who are 12 and 15, are just fearlessly diving down in this water. It was just us and the snorkel instructor, and they're diving down, and there's like incredible sea turtles, these huge sea turtles that are just gracefully, like, my kids still laugh at me because I'm so entranced with the whole thing, flapping, through the water and gracefully floating. And I had my phone on around my neck in a waterproof case.
Yeah.
I am trying to get these pictures, and I'm distracted because I can't get the video on, and I'm in the water, snorkeling, trying to breathe right. I'm trying to click these pictures. Finally, I'm like, what am I doing? I am wasting this experience. If I really want to look at sea turtles again, I'll find a video online. And I just stopped, and I just started looking at everything around me. It's like we're in their world. We're in these sea creatures' world. They're letting us in. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at my boys, and like it brought tears to my eyes, because it was this once in a lifetime moment that I
Yeah.
could never get back, that I
Yeah.
almost lost because I'm so crazily trying to capture the moment. I mean, it didn't make
Yeah.
sense. And it was so eye-opening. And I told my boys about it afterwards, and I was like, I was this magical, magical moment that it was ingrained in my memory now forever, that I would have lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I try to tell people the most is, that's just one example, but like, you can't get back these moments. So just try to be present in everything. If you're exercising, make that your moment. Don't have the phone near you. Don't feel like you have to text 1,000 people, because you don't.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
fine in your half hour of exercise. Or if you're talking to your kids, or if you are, whatever, listening to this podcast, try to be present and be in the moment, because life is so short. Time goes so fast and we don't get it back.
Yeah, and that's been coming up. I don't know if it's an age thing, but I think as the older you get and you see your children growing and you're like, how did we get here? I have, my boys are similar ages, 14, 10, and 7. And my 14-year-old is taller than me, and he's talking about going down the shore, and he's starting high school. And it's like in a blink of an eye. I mean, I remember just strolling him around the city in his little carriage, and it does go so fast. But I love what you're saying, like whether we're working out, like putting the phone down, just letting yourself like actually be with working out, or if we're seeing something beautiful, really taking that in. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is no longer, he passed away recently, but he often would talk about mindfulness and just walking, like when we're walking, just knowing, just feeling in the body, like feeling what it's like to just be walking. But your trip is reminding me. We were not too long ago, about 2 months ago, we went to Montana. I had never been to Montana, and I was really excited. My dad is a huge fly fisherman, and as a little girl, he would take me to some streams. But I was more interested in like collecting rocks and whatnot, like around the stream. I wasn't so much into the fly fishing end. But as I've gotten older, and I see all of the beauty in what he does, and I've watched him on the beach, and he like ties his own flies, and it's like a whole art. But he's very much in the moment, like he reads the water and he looks at the sky, like he can just very much be with nature and sense into, where's best to cast. But with all this in my mind, when I actually went out with a guide to go fishing, I was so focused, like on reading the water and casting the right way and looking for where's best to catch a fish, that I had to take moments to remind myself. And it wasn't on my phone. You couldn't really, it was like raining and I couldn't juggle everything. So it wasn't that I was distracted by phone or any type of device, but it's this reminder to like pause and to just take in the beauty of what's here. So from time to time, I would have to remind myself to look up from the rod, look up from the river, and like see, like look in the sky, see the mountains that were around us. And so I think this really is sort of like a metaphor for life, that sometimes we can get so laser focused on something, or we get distracted maybe, and just the ability to become aware is what allows us to be more fully present in whether it's our workout, whether it's being aware of what we're eating or what we're thinking. So I love that story about what you experienced in the Maldives, and I'm sure it's one that you and your boys will forever remember. So thank you for sharing that. Speaking of stories, I'm interested in whether you have any real life examples that you can share. I know you shared one earlier about the client of yours who skipped out on a race that she was looking to do, but do you have any transforming journeys where your clients have experienced such benefits in their work that they've done with you, either on the nutritional end or the exercise, or both, like together, what they've taken away from working with you?
Yeah, I think my one of my favorite stories is the woman who came to this was years ago, and she started her health journey because she was on a lot of medicines. She was heading towards diabetes. She was pre-diabetic, teetering right on the line of diabetes, and she had high blood pressure. She had high cholesterol. I mean, pretty much, if you could think of it, she had it.
Yeah.
And she came to me. She was a very smart woman. She's actually a therapist, and she came to me and said, I need help. And the help that I need is to get my diet in line, to get my exercise in line, to get my head in line, because I have to reduce stress and I have to start taking care of myself. And
Right.
my goal is one thing and one thing only, is to get off these medicines.
Hmm.
And we worked together for probably about 6 to 7 months and cleaned up her diet a ton,
Yeah.
and worked out. And then also got her in a place where we would take 30 minutes every day that she would just have for herself, emotional, mental well-being, whether that was for her meditation, whether that was each day was something different, but she needed that 30 minutes. And that's kind of what we build into this whole piece of this balanced circle of health. And she called me up one morning and she said, I have I'm not going to be able to meet with you tomorrow because I have my appointment with my doctor. And this was kind of like our big day. Our big moment was to see where everything came together. And she called me the next day after that at like 6 in the morning. I still like tear up thinking about it, but she was crying. She said,
Yeah.
oh, thank you so much. I had to call you. I hope I'm not waking you. But, I saw the doctor last night and I still feel like I woke up this morning thinking it was a dream. She said, I am no longer taking any medicine other than fish oil pills for the
Yeah.
cholesterol. And all of my numbers have come down significantly. And
So,
then she also went for a DEXA scan after that because she had been, not osteoporosis, but she had gone on the line of osteopenia, which is, before you get osteoporosis where your
yeah.
bones are slightly weakened.
Right.
And they sent her for another one and that was improved. So she had actually
Yeah.
increased her muscle mass so much through lifting weights and walking, just any kind of resistance training, that
Yeah.
piece also came in line. And I
Amazing.
thought that was so beautiful, and she was just like, you have broken, everything that I have, all these walls that I put up, you helped me break down because I can do it, and it's this whole balance piece. And it was so beautiful because I think that that's what people want, but then give up on so quick if
Hmm.
it's not perfect, like you said, if you don't hit the
Yeah.
way. And she didn't hit every goal immediately, but her overall goal was like, hey, I want to live like this for a lifetime. I want to
Yeah.
be healthy. She was, I think at the time, 44.
Hmm.
Um, and she was like, I want to lose weight. I want to look good, but mostly I want to feel good. It's not even
Yeah.
the look. I want to feel good. So it was so beautiful. And it was, this story that I'll always remember. And the next appointment I actually went with her. It was 6 months later, and she actually asked me to go with her to the doctor, and we did, and results
Oh,
were even better. And
yeah.
she's still working. I still work with her, and she's just progressed on so much over the years that it's just incredible.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. And what I'm taking away from it is how empowering that was for her. Like, where she didn't think maybe she had some type of wall, some type of obstacle where maybe on her own, like she knew she had the intentionality, like she was coming from a good place, but with your help, like having you in her corner, when she, like you said, she didn't do everything maybe, like she didn't check off all the boxes, but all that she did and look at the amazing results that she got. It's similar to the work that I do on the mindfulness front, where we can help people to recognize that we have these inner resources. It's just a matter of strengthening them. And so from coming from our respective angles, like for people to know that they have the support, and maybe there's going to be those moments where you're not feeling like you're at the top of your game, but even so that you can look from where you were and how far you've come in this particular case. I mean, to go off just about all the medications, and her goal being to lose weight, but on top of that, to boot, she was feeling better. When you get a taste, I think, of how you're feeling, like that's going to give you the momentum to keep at it, to be consistently working at promoting your own well-being. So kudos to you, kudos to her for that transforming experience. It's really encouraging to me. So that being said, I find, like in my own practice, in whether it's mindfulness, in emotional, mental well-being, and physical well-being, What I see coming up for me, more so now, I don't know if it's because of where I am in age, but there's so much out there. There's so much information for, what you're being told you should do, what you should take, what you should eat, what you shouldn't be doing. And it can get dizzying at times, so much so that sometimes I'll just go back to what it is I'm used to. But I'm very I guess I don't consider myself like a health nut. I'm not over the top, but I definitely like learning the latest and greatest that's out there, from nutrition to exercise. How do you, with like all the information that's out there, how do you stay updated and informed and know like who and what you can trust?
I think, for me, I've always been one theory, and that's it. And that is eat clean, exercise, and reduce stress. And not even reduce stress. It's how do you handle the stress? Because we're all going to have stress, right? I mean, it's
Right,
just say we're not, but like, how quick can you recover from the stress?
right.
So I really try to make sure that, and anybody who works with me knows that, whether it's corporate clients, companies, or my individual clients. So I do not get looped into all the greatest and the latest and greatest, like these crazy diets and super
Yeah,
restrictive things. And obviously now everything is injectables, Ozempic and Wegovy and all
yeah,
that stuff. And I really tell people, like, there is no magic pill, right? There's just not. So of course, I will keep updated on new products that come out and different foods and things like that. But at the end of the day, it really is eating as close to nature as you can, moving your body in any and every way that you can. Doesn't always have to be a crazy intense workout, but it's constant movement and it's constant resistance training till you do build your muscle mass.
right.
But I always tell people, because everyone gets so, and this is not just like, my teenage clients, it's everybody that I work with, men, women, young, old, gets so suckered in with all this social media advertisement.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just so people know, I always say this, like, I am on three things: Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, for work purposes only. And
Yeah.
through those three things, without exaggeration, I probably get, you know, 20 20 to 30 email or direct messages a day
Mhm.
asking me to promote their products. They'll send me free stuff. Will I promote this? Can that is just, 20 to 30 days. So we're talking
Yeah.
like hundreds, hundreds over the course of a month. And what happens is I always say no. I'm linked in with three places, and that is it. And those are
Mhm.
products I truly believe in. But the rest of the stuff, people get suckered in with that because lots of people say yes to that. Because you
Yeah.
get products and then you have people promoting it, or you're getting kickbacks from that. Whether people believe in that or not, whether they work or not, nobody knows. So what you constantly see. So I always tell people, like, look, if you're coming to me and saying you want to start taking this supplement, you better research this. Like, you don't just want to put stuff in your body. And
Yeah.
if something's, too good, it's like sounds too good to be true. It is. Like, if something's saying you're going to lose weight in a week and there's nothing wrong with that's going to do to your body, that's not true.
So,
So, you
less
know,
is more sometimes, and
less
just
is
going back to the
more.
basics.
And
Yeah.
it's not a popular opinion. Nobody wants to hear it, but I think we're seeing that now. It was like everything from Atkins, years and years ago, to
Yeah.
South to keto, to paleo, to now Ozempic and all these drugs. It's like it always comes full circle where it's like, oh wait, no, that wasn't so great. Like intermittent fasting. Now suddenly
Hmm.
articles are coming out. Oh no, that actually might cause heart attacks in women. Eat
Yeah.
clean, exercise, and handle stress. Like, it's really no magic pill.
Yeah.
It's just figuring out ways to do those three things for yourself. I really believe that.
I like that. It simplifies life, and you can kind of bypass everything else that's being pumped through, like you said, with social media, magazines, television. So just keep it simple and clean. One, I don't want to say one area, but something that's really big, and especially for the busy lives of so many professionals and individuals. I know a lot of people, whether they're walking the dog or driving to work or they're on their lunch break, they're really into podcasts. And speaking of podcasts, here we are. But is there someone in particular whose podcast you really like in terms of, if someone wants to pop on an episode to learn a little bit or a lot about nutrition, exercise, overall wellness, is there someone right now who maybe you listen to that you would encourage others to listen to as well?
They kind of range for me. So I listen to really heady podcasts, kind of deep science-based podcasts sometimes. I'll listen to Andrew Huberman. His
Mm,
podcasts are long and
yeah.
definitely not, an easy, kind of strolling, relaxing listen, but they're really interesting.
Yeah.
Especially his alcohol podcast.
Mm.
I think that was August of last year, if anybody's listening to it. For anybody listening, it is eye opening. I always tell my clients to listen to it because
Yeah.
at least I always think of alcohol directly relating to your liver, but it is so directly related to your brain, and what it does to your brain over time. And I thought that was a really interesting podcast. He has other good ones too. I also listened to Dr. Mark Hyman, another doctor who talks different things all about health and wellness. I listened to the Mindset Mentor. For those of you who want to listen and have little kids in the car, don't put it on. He curses a lot. But he's just quick 20-25 minutes, and they're
Yeah.
little snippets that I find really interesting.
Hmm.
But then I go a little bit more relaxing. So it's not just health and nutrition, but I like Rob Lowe's podcast. I think he has really interesting people on there.
Oh, I haven't
Uh,
heard his yet.
yeah, it's really good. Rob Lowe, who I think is timeless because he still looks like he's 20. So
He does. He
I'm always,
does.
I think that's just like an incredible phenomenon with him. But he has really interesting people on, from actors to doctors, and
Yeah.
his podcast is called Literally. I think that's just an interesting kind of like fun podcast. Um,
Awesome. Yeah.
and then,
Huberman. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
oh
off.
no, go ahead.
The Huberman I saw had one recently. I haven't listened to it yet, but it was really interesting. So I think it's one where, women, I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40. And he had something on hormones and sort of, how we want to care for our bodies and our minds as we approach, yeah, different ages and or I should say seasoned ages. And so that's like an area where I feel like we don't get, at least in school, you really didn't get a lot of knowledge. So I'm looking forward to listening to that episode of his. So speaking about busyness and how do we weave wellness into our busy lives, I know that in all that you juggle between your boys' schedules, your personal, your professional schedules, that it can really be a very busy time at any given moment. So do you have any tips or practices that you follow so that you can still maintain some sense of peace and overall well-being amidst the very busy schedule?
Yeah, I'm all about combining things. So my schedule on most days, I work 12-hour days during the
Ah,
week.
yeah.
And just very, between meeting with clients either online or in person and then presenting for companies, I'm always busy, And so I try to combine as much as I can. I recently adopted a dog who I'm so in love with. He luckily is a runner. So for me, I like to have my own time in the morning. So if I have very early morning meetings or clients, I like to just get up, have at least an hour to myself. Nobody's awake. My kids are like yours. They're getting up at, 12 o'clock if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So I will get up early and have all this time to just kind of get myself together. And I like to run at least 3 times a week. And I'm usually training for a half marathon or hopefully a marathon this year. And I will train with the dog. So instead of having to get up and, oh, I have to walk the dog and then I'm going to have to exercise, I just make that combined. So I will run with the dog for, 3, 4, 5 miles, and then I will come home and kind of get started. Or I will figure out ways in between my meetings that I can do something. Either that's, a little bit of meditation, whether that's prepping meals for the week. It might not
Yeah.
be on a Monday. I might be prepping for the next week on a Wednesday, but I will find little snippets of time during the day that I can do that. And I map that out the night before because everyone's like, well, how do you fit that in? I actually like write down what I'm going to do the night before.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you. I don't necessarily write it down, but I tend to really crave that hour before anyone gets up. And my youngest, he sort of, whereas before I would get up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get that hour, or even just like 40 minutes before the craziness of getting everyone else's stuff together. He is a really early riser, so I would have to get up even earlier and earlier. So now I'm part of like the 4:30 a.m. crew where I happen to be I have the most energy in the morning, so it works well for me. But that's my time to, whether it's doing something active like you, like going outside for a run or a walk, or doing a workout, or just sitting and meditating, like practicing the art of non-doing, that really fuels me for the rest of the day. But for people who maybe aren't, like, the thought of getting up before 6 o'clock, or even getting up at 6 o'clock and doing something active, just totally, they turn the other way. Or maybe I happen to enjoy really nutritious foods. But that being said, I also like, if you give me a waffle with ice cream like that, that's one of my guilty pleasures. But for people who maybe doesn't come to them naturally to get up first thing in the morning, go for a run, or choose a healthy diet, do you have any tips for how people can start to incorporate wellness both on the exercise and nutritional end? Like, even if it's just starting in small ways, so that over time they can really promote more of a groove in the wellness arena?
I always like to start with when I start working with someone, I always like to start with two little steps because I think anything else is very overwhelming. Whether that be, we always sit down and talk in the beginning and say, what things are derailing you, food wise, alcohol is a huge one. Exercise, stress, we'll kind of figure out what are these things that are really a problem and there are obstacles for health and wellness. And then we take two of those, like I always like to take two of them and start working on them. So like I said, a lot of times it is alcohol. So if it's, someone's drinking, which happens way more than I think people even realize, 2, 3 drinks a night, even, after work, it's kind of a transition from, working to now you're with the family or now
Yeah.
you're done for the day. If they're doing that, we try to just figure out little ways that they can start slimming that down. Um, if it's food, it's so funny how like a lot of people have never been taught what clean eating is, what actually eating good foods for your body is, what your
Yeah.
body needs. I worked with a client recently. It was so interesting to me. He's a super smart guy. He's a self-made millionaire on his own. I mean, kudos to him. He did not go to college. He started his own business and he's done very, very well. He's very young and he's done
Mhm.
very well. But it was interesting because he said to me, we were talking about sugars and I said, how much added sugar? And he's like, what does that even mean? Like, so
Mhm.
he was, he also likes really heady podcasts and things like that. So he's really interested in this. And with this whole talk about it, he said, this is fascinating because, he's 34 and he said, obviously I've done well for myself business wise, but no one has ever taught me this. Like we didn't learn this in school. You
Right.
hear all this, what natural food is or healthy. And I said, yeah, there's no FDA requirement on what natural is. Like anybody can put their products natural. There's no FDA requirement for what that looks like.
Right.
People don't know. And he said, I really like had no clue until I started working with you what good eating is. I know like a Twinkie isn't healthy, but like I didn't know that, some yogurts are like a Twinkie. Some yogurts could have 20
Yeah.
sugar. He's like, and
Yeah.
I'm feeling so much better eating cleaner because I know what I'm supposed to do to feel better and to eat better.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that, where someone says to me, I don't know, I'm an educated person here and I have no clue how to eat right. So it could be something like that where we sit down and just say, okay, let's like talk about it. And then let's implement 3, 4 things you could do throughout the day to eat better, to feel better. So
Right.
it's just these two, I always say like, let's take these two things. So it's just kind of these small little things that people can do throughout the day. And that's what I like to start with. If it's like, hey, I have no time to work out, I'm like,
Yeah.
great. how many meetings are off Zoom? How many meetings do you take that aren't on video? And they
Right.
might say like 3 a day that are never on video. You're just calls. Then we're going to start with walking during those calls.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and then like I tell
Practical.
companies that, you
Yeah. I
know, so
love,
it's the same for companies where I'm like, you're asking me how to make your employees happier. How do you get better employee retention? How do you bring more people in? Make them healthier, make them happier. Like, and then the companies will start doing that. Hey, this is an off camera meeting. We're going to walk.
super. I love that because the better your employees feel, the more productive they're going to be. And in turn, the better business you're going to run. So I think that it's a win-win situation. And what I really enjoy about your approach from the get-go when you came on today, talking about how simplistic, how practical, and how individualized that you can really take into consideration the demands that any particular person has in their personal or professional lives, and then tailor the program that you create for that person so that they can actually attain their goals. So I really appreciate that. And I heard you say that you can bring these practices into the workplace. If a company wanted to reach out to you to see what types of programs you could offer to their workforce, or maybe a professional or an individual wants to work with you, learn more about what you have to offer, either from the nutritional and the exercise and education, how is best for them to connect with you?
They can go to my website, which is mlcfitness, all one word.com. It's on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Fitness One is my social media platform. And Megan Simberg O'Neill, Cinberg, O'Neill on LinkedIn, which I love connecting with other professionals on LinkedIn as well. And then if anybody's looking for how do I exercise on the go, I started a travel bag for fitness on the go, which is a little lightweight bag that has everything you need in it for travel, for the workplace, for at home, for a park, so that you kind of have no excuse not to exercise. And that is fitgobag, all one word.com.
Super. Well, thank you so much for all of this valuable information, for your time. And as always, even though we don't have our dog, well, I did see your dog in the background, but even though I don't have my dog by my side, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. So thank you so much. And thanks, listeners, for listening to this episode with Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.